You probably don't have a focus problem. You have dozens of tiny habits quietly training your brain to lose focus, and because each habit seems harmless by itself, you probably don't even realize how much they're affecting your ability to concentrate. The dangerous part is that most of these habits don't look serious. Checking your phone for a few seconds doesn't feel harmful. Opening one more tab doesn't either. But when these tiny actions happen dozens of times every day, they completely change how your brain handles attention. Every interruption teaches your brain that your attention doesn't have to stay in one place for very long. Instead of learning to remain with one difficult task, your brain slowly becomes better at looking for something new whenever the current task becomes boring. And after repeating that behavior all day, sitting down to concentrate on one difficult task starts feeling strangely uncomfortable. The problem isn't necessarily that the task became harder. Your brain simply became accustomed to constant stimulation and frequent escape. So let's look at 10 tiny habits that may be quietly destroying your focus. You might recognize several of them immediately, and the important part is that you don't need to eliminate everything at once. You just need to understand what you're training your brain to do. The first habit is checking your phone every few minutes, even when you don't have a notification or any real reason to look at it. You might tell yourself that you're only checking for a second, but that second becomes a repeated interruption throughout your entire day. A single check might take only 5 seconds, but your attention doesn't instantly return to the task you were doing before. Your eyes may return to the screen, but part of your mind is still processing what happened on your phone. Part of your mind keeps thinking about what you just saw, what you might have missed, or whether another notification is coming. So even when you're physically back at your desk, your attention isn't completely back with you. Your phone doesn't need to steal an entire hour from you. It only needs to steal your attention a few seconds at a time, repeatedly. Those small interruptions add up, and eventually you may wonder why you can no longer concentrate the way you used to. The second habit happens before your day has even started properly. Reaching for your phone and checking notifications immediately after waking up. Before you've even decided what matters today, you're already consuming information chosen by other people and other algorithms. Before you've decided what deserves your attention, your phone has already decided what you're going to think about first. One message becomes another notification, then another piece of information, and suddenly your mind is reacting instead of choosing. Instead of beginning your day intentionally, you immediately enter a reactive state where you're responding to whatever appears on your screen. And once your brain starts the morning in reaction mode, it's much easier to continue jumping between distractions throughout the rest of the day. You don't have to completely avoid your phone every morning. Just create a small space between waking up and consuming information. Give yourself a chance to decide what deserves your attention before the world starts asking for it. The third habit is multitasking. It feels productive because you're doing several things at once, but most of the time you're actually dividing your attention between several incomplete tasks and making each one harder than it needs to be. Your brain isn't actually giving every task its full attention. It's rapidly switching between tasks and paying a small mental cost every time. That constant switching can make simple work take longer while making you feel strangely exhausted afterward. You might answer a message, return to your work, check another tab, then come back again. Each time you switch, you have to remember where you were, what you were thinking, and what you were supposed to do next. Instead of asking how many things you can handle simultaneously, ask yourself how long you can stay completely focused on one thing. Deep focus isn't about doing more things. It's about giving one important thing enough uninterrupted attention. The fourth habit looks harmless, keeping dozens of browser tabs open because you might need them later. Eventually, your browser becomes a visual representation of everything you haven't finished, everything you're researching, and everything you might possibly need. Every open tab represents unfinished information. Another decision, another possibility, or something your brain might feel responsible for remembering, even when you're not looking at those tabs. They remain part of your mental environment. You may not consciously think about those tabs, but they create mental clutter that makes it harder to give your full attention to the task in front of you. Your computer might have plenty of memory, but your attention doesn't. Close what you don't need. Save important information somewhere organized and give yourself permission to have a clean screen. The fewer places your attention can escape to, the easier it becomes to stay with the task that actually matters. The fifth habit is keeping something playing in the background all the time because silence feels uncomfortable or strangely empty. You might have music, a podcast, a video, or TV running even when you aren't actually listening. Music, podcasts, videos, conversations, and other sounds can constantly give your brain something additional to process while you're trying to work. Sometimes you don't notice the distraction because you've become so used to having noise around you. The problem isn't always that the noise completely distracts you. Sometimes it's that a small part of your attention is always occupied by something else, leaving less mental space available for reading, thinking, solving problems, or creating. Try giving yourself periods of silence, especially during difficult work. You may discover that your brain can concentrate much better when it isn't constantly receiving new information from something happening in the background. The sixth habit is abandoning a task the moment it becomes boring, difficult, confusing, or slightly frustrating. Instead of pushing through the uncomfortable moment, you immediately search for something easier or more entertaining. Every time you escape discomfort by switching to something easier, your brain learns that uncomfortable effort is something it should avoid. The escape feels good for a moment, which makes the brain more likely to repeat the behavior next time. Eventually, even ordinary concentration can start feeling unpleasant because your brain has become used to escaping whenever things stop being immediately rewarding. The problem isn't always the task itself. Sometimes it's the habit of escaping from discomfort. The solution isn't forcing yourself to work for hours without stopping. It's practicing staying with the difficult part for just a little longer before you escape. That small delay teaches your brain a completely different response to discomfort. The seventh habit is consuming endless short-form content whenever you have a spare moment, whether you're waiting, eating, walking, or simply feeling bored. Those tiny moments of scrolling can quietly become hours of constant stimulation. Short videos constantly give your brain something new before it has enough time to become bored. New image, new sound, new topic, new reward, over and over again. Your brain becomes accustomed to receiving stimulation almost instantly. Then you open a book or start a difficult task, and suddenly 5 minutes feels incredibly slow compared with the endless novelty you just experienced. The task hasn't necessarily become boring. Your baseline for stimulation has changed. Your attention hasn't disappeared. You've simply trained it to expect something new before it has to tolerate stillness. And like any habit, that training can be reversed by gradually giving your brain more time without constant stimulation. The eighth habit is checking messages while you're working, especially when you're expecting someone to reply or waiting for something important. Even if you know you should focus, curiosity keeps pulling part of your attention toward the phone. Even when there isn't a new message, checking creates anticipation. You look, see nothing, return to work, and eventually feel the urge to check again. That tiny loop can repeat far more often than you realize. That cycle keeps part of your attention outside the task you're supposedly concentrating on. You're working, but you're also waiting. And waiting for the next notification makes it much harder to enter a truly deep state of concentration. Instead of constantly checking, decide when you'll check your messages. Give your attention a protected period where nothing else gets access to it, and you'll be surprised how much easier deep work becomes. The ninth habit is starting your day without knowing what actually deserves your attention. You look at a long list of tasks, emails, messages, ideas, and responsibilities, and everything starts competing for the same limited attention. When everything feels important, your brain keeps jumping between possibilities instead of committing completely to one specific outcome. You spend energy deciding what to do instead of actually doing it. Before you start working, choose one important task and decide what finishing it actually means. You don't need to know everything you'll do today. You just need to know what deserves your attention right now. The 10th habit may be the most important, never allowing yourself to experience boredom without immediately reaching for your phone or another source of stimulation. The moment nothing is happening, you feel the need to fill the space. Every empty moment becomes another opportunity to scroll, watch, check, listen, or consume something instead of simply letting your mind be quiet. Eventually, being alone with your own thoughts can start feeling uncomfortable. But boredom isn't always the enemy. Sometimes your brain needs a period without stimulation before deeper thinking, creativity, reflection, or even new ideas can begin to appear. Silence gives your mind room to connect things. You don't need to eliminate every distraction from your life. You need to stop repeatedly feeding the tiny habits that interrupt your attention. The goal isn't perfect focus. The goal is making distraction less automatic. Start small. Silence unnecessary notifications, put your phone away, close unused tabs, reduce background noise, and work on one thing at a time. You don't need to change your entire life today. Just remove one source of unnecessary stimulation. Most importantly, practice staying when your brain tells you to switch, scroll, check something, or escape. That moment of resistance might feel insignificant, but every time you stay, you're strengthening the ability to remain focused. Focus isn't something you're simply born with. It's a behavior your brain learns through repetition. Every focused minute gives your brain evidence that you can stay, think, and finish without constantly searching for something new. Every time you resist a tiny distraction, you're teaching your brain that your attention belongs to you. And once you can control where your attention goes, the next challenge is learning how to keep going when motivation disappears. That's exactly what we'll cover in Why You Always Quit.